My name is Eric Benson. I'm one of the head designers here at Chompers Dental. And today I'm going to walk you through really quickly a video on how I use a library that I've come up with and the philosophy behind designing my design philosophy. My design philosophy is very simple. Find a library instead of using a library and fixing little things in it every single time you design with it. Why not fix it behind the scenes and create a library in the control panel that is perfect, quote unquote perfect, to the best of your abilities, the way you like it every single time to come out. So that way you don't have to fix this cusp or that marginal ridge or that gingiva area every single time you design with tooth number 3. Okay, so instead, create your own library where you have it idealized ahead of time. That way when it spits out, it gives you exactly what you want. Now, the majority of my world when it comes to designing revolves around using this setting right here, individual transformation, where I'm placing the tooth. I've probably trained 8, 9, 10 people in 3Shape, and I finally got to the point with one day with one of my trainees. I finally said, you're not a designer, you're not designing teeth, you're not creating a tooth like you're sitting down and waxing it on the bench with the wax carver and a blob of wax. You're not. You're literally placing a tooth that you've been given. The library spits out a fully functional, fully contoured tooth, and then you're setting it inside of its boundaries, and then you're forgetting it. You're placing, setting, forgetting. You're moving on very quickly because you're not creating a tooth. You're placing a tooth. You're setting its margins, you're setting its contacts, you're setting its occlusion, and you're done. This kind of tooth right here, single posterior, can be done in about 3.5 minutes. It could even go even faster if the software allowed it, but the software is a little slow. I've got my computer souped up, but there's just some things that the software can't go any faster at. That's what it is. So I'm going to walk you through how I design, and then I'm going to do a second video of me literally designing at full speed. Okay, there's a few things I want to show you here. There's a lot of time savers built into the software that not a lot of people use. One of them is I set the very first thing I do, I've got it pre-programmed in my mouse. We spend the majority of our world trying to do this, and then you do something and then you try and get back to that one spot. So why not set a spot, a pre-programmed view? Okay, so one of the first things I do is I find that beautiful view that I like to work from. Single posterior, I'm looking at this tooth and I'm looking at this tooth and I'm lining up the arch beautifully. Okay, so this is where I want my view to be from. So when that happens, you get that perfect spot, you come over here, set from view, set front view, press that button, and then I pre-programmed this. Control Alt Home, I pre-programmed that into my mouse. So I have, every time I press one button on my mouse, it takes me right back here. Huge time saver. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about is my library. The one, it's mine, but it's really what it is. I took 3 libraries in 3Shape and I idealized them. I spent about 4 years worth of research, 4 years worth of design experience, and put them into what I wanted in a perfect library. And then I created that library and I use it for everything. Okay, not because none of these aren't that good, they are, but I got one that I like, that I use, that I'm constantly tweaking, constantly updating, and I like it. And a lot of people, well, the people that I design for, they really like it also. Williams, I give them this custom 3.0. It's a library that I named that, but it's what I give them for everything, and they've gotten used to it and they really like it. And I would like to see everybody that designs for Williams using the same library because it creates that consistency. Okay, my philosophy is this: leave the library alone. Okay, it's a pretty good tooth to begin with, so why not, once you find a library you like working with Williams, we give them this one. But the point is, you find one that's already preset ahead of time, idealized exactly the way you want it, and just use it instead of having to redesign the tooth every time. Perfected ahead of time in the library settings, and then you tweak a few things and call it good. So I'm going to run through my design. Every time this is what I do. Once I get to this point, make the tooth partially translucent, I turn on the collision, or whatever that's called, collision lines, okay, and then I turn on the minimum thickness. Okay, once I get here, the majority of my world revolves around right here, individual transformation, which is D on the keyboard. Okay, this is where 90% of my work is done. Everything else really after this fact is just a few little incidentals that I do. I'm placing, I'm looking over here, working some more. I'm going to get also, before I set my margins, I'm going to pretty much, before I set my margins, 90% of my work is already done. 90% of my design is designed. Okay, see how bulbousy this is right here? That's one thing about this library I don't like, but I'm going to leave this alone. I'm going to come back to that here in a minute. Bring this up. Okay, S, working arch, A, opposing, hotkeys for everything. Okay, control button, and this grows and shrinks. I don't know if you knew that, but that's what it does. Okay, shift is also one that uses for hotkey. If I was designing this tooth and this tooth, shift doing this, shift will actually do the same thing for both teeth at the exact same time. That's for my interior design. Okay, so I've got a little point of contact. I don't like how it's hitting here. I want cusp to fossa contact as best as possible. Okay, I'm not doing this and then this. That is one way to get in trouble really quickly. Why not do this? Use the tooth, the way it's set up, and do small minor changes to the library. Okay, I'm going to add down here, get as close to the margin as possible. Okay, now that I've got my tooth ideally set up, notice how it still looks the same. Okay, here's the next key. When you go from the movement tool to the individual morphing tool, okay, I don't use that blue blade. I don't use that. It's a great reference tool, but I don't. Control button gives you this. Okay, this is how my world revolves around this in this tool, is this, because it forces you into one plane versus this where you can make a mess real quick. This, it keeps you it's a very rigid tool, but I like that because we want to keep things quick, fast, and efficient. This, you get in trouble real fast. This, you got one thing. Okay, another thing is the circle of influence. I keep it large. Okay, I don't want to come down here. If this is, let's see, if this is tucked in, I don't want to come in here and start doing this. That's how you make a monster out of something that wasn't. So what I do is shift button, shift and scroll changes the size of that circle. Okay, most everything you can do in 3Shape you can do by touching a keyboard, touching the button on the keys, or touching a key, versus coming over here or coming over here. Most everything. Okay, I don't like this, is a little bulky, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back. Big circle of influence. Bring this down. Little things, I'm tweaking little things, but I'm using a big circle of influence, little movements. Okay, if I want to take this cusp and bring it back some more, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this, or I'll do this, but I'm using a large swath. I'm attacking a large amounts of the tooth. I'm moving the whole cusp instead of just that little blob on the side of it. Okay, Now that I've got it pretty much set where I want, I'm going to do 3 or 4 things all at once, and I go through these wicked fast when I'm designing. I just pop, 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 pop. But I'm going to slow down and show you what I do. The next thing I'm going to do, once I've got my tooth pretty much set, I'm going to come over here, Z, which gives us the contacts and smoothing tool. I'm going to hit my occlusal clearance, 0.15 out of occlusion. Okay, negative 0.07 for contacts. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is go back to the sculpt, hit my connection, and I'm going to connect my margin. Okay, the reason why I did my contact ahead of time is a lot of times if you do your contacts after you do your margins, for whatever reason, it will corrupt this line right here. And just you turn this off, minimum thickness, and you'll see it's all broken up and beat up, that margin line offset. So I'll do my contacts ahead of time. You can do it again afterwards, but just be leery of the fact that that right there will be corrupted. Okay, now that I've got that set, I do those 3 things. Let's go back, do it real quick. Show you Z. Okay, I'm going to do my occlusal clearance, boom, contact, boom, and then I do my margin line, or connect the margins, and I turn this on. I turn this, make sure this is on, and put this about 0.34, the distance map, just gives me a color reference. Okay, so I notice that I've got some spots here where I'm mildly out of occlusion, which is perfect. I don't want to bring this marginal ridge up anymore because it's already high. Lingual cusps, I want to try and get, cusp fossa here, occlusion, and cusp fossa occlusion here. That's pretty exaggerated. We're not doing that. Okay, we're leaving this occlusion right where it's at, nice and minimal right along the center point. Okay, now I'm going to, once I do this, I do those 3 or 4 things. I set my occlusal gap, I set my contacts, I set my margins, I come in here and I turn this on and make this more opacious. Now that I've got here, I'm going to go to the wax knife tool, which is G in the wax knife, okay, on the keyboard, G. So this tool, there's lots of ways of changing this. Okay, you've got your plus, you've got your minus, and you've got your smooth. Okay, there's hotkeys for everything on 3Shape. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are individual settings you can pre-program. 1, I've got mine set to where I can add. Okay, it's specific size of influence and specific strength. Okay, 2 is the minus tool. 3 is the smooth tool, specific size and specific strength. 4, I've beefed up my strength and smoothing tool. 5, so these are all individual tools that I've created. Okay, so all you got to do is hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you hit G, it takes you to the wax knife. So G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, there it is. Simple. Okay, once I've set my contacts and margins, I'll come in here and I'm going to smooth down here. I stay away from up here. I keep this, I don't ever do this because this is already smooth to begin with. Once it's milled, it's a little smoother. You lose a little of that detail. They're going to grind it in, lose more detail, and then glaze it, and the next thing you know, you've got a marble. Next thing you know, it looks like this after it's been glazed. So keep it as sharp as possible. Alright, so I'm smoothing around here, clean up down below, clean up here, add where I need to. A lot of times on the lingual, when you set margins, it'll do this to the lingual of posteriors. So almost every time you'll have to come in here and have to add there. So if you want to add. Okay, smooth. I'm always I'm smoothing up the margin area. 3Shape corrupts, 3Shape beats up your design when you set your margins. It thinks it's helping you, but a lot of times it beats things up. It's the worst on inlays and veneers. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit right here. This lab likes really broad, wide contacts. Once that I've added those contacts, I'm going to hit them one more time after I've smoothed down below. Okay, now I've got that set. My occlusal is set. My contacts are set. My margins look good. My morphology is pretty smooth. I like the way it looks. It's not beat up from setting the margins. Now the next tool is V, which is also articulator or double clicking on the model. Okay, I make sure it's placed properly. Okay, now in the occlusal plane, go to this tool, hit play. What you're doing is you're running it through the patient's bite. Now my design philosophy is I almost never have to adjust anything in this with the articulator on. If you're hitting, you press this button, the play button, it'll show up to where it's hot here. So you just hit adapt design, boom, and it'll automatically remove. I don't want that to happen. It'll just spoon it out. It just looks terrible. So I preset things ahead of time to where I don't have to use. I do this as a insurance policy, but I don't want this to be changing my design. Okay, now that that's set, everything is done. Looks beautiful. Still looks just like the original design. My next video, I'm going to grab another tooth just to show you a different tooth, and I'm going to run through it full speed. So really, in quick reference, the philosophy is A, hotkeys for everything. Okay. B, use a pre-idealized library ahead of time. My library, the one I like, the Custom 3, is a library that I've spent years. I've designed with it for probably a year and a half, but it's been in the back of my brain, and I've designed it like this every time I designed a tooth. I designed it like this, and then I decided one day just to make it perfect. Now this isn't perfect, but the beauty is if you find little things you have to do every single time, like this marginal ridge, it's too low. So what I'm going to do is go into my library ahead of time, behind the scenes, and add to this right here. So every time it comes out, I don't have to add to this. That's where you're saving time by having a preformed tooth that's the ideal as possible. Using hotkeys and letting the library speak for itself by using the majority of your time in just placing, setting, and forgetting. Thank you. Next video, I'm going to design a full speed.